supporting you in your dog parenting journey. The Dynamic Dog Owner with Debbie Potter. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Dynamic Dog Owner. I hope you are all having a wonderful week. Before we get started today, I wanted to let you know about something very exciting that is happening with Potter Paws, the launch of our online Paw Academy. This is a hub of training videos, training support, interaction that is accessible wherever you are in the country, in the world. You can have direct support from a bank of online videos, but also interaction with a trainer, with a training team to help you enjoy training, overcome any challenges you may have. And it's a nice community where you can train remotely for whatever reason, if that suits you, whether your dog's reactive, whether you don't have a good training school nearby, or you're always on the move, or work shift work, whatever it may be. For more information, check out the link in our bio, and that will make sure that you are the first to hear about our new Paw Academy when it launches in a couple of weeks' time. And it'd be great to see you as one of our first members of the Paw Academy. So let's get on to today's topic. Today we're talking about reactive dogs and why group classes may not be ideal at the start of your training journey. So first of all, I know we've talked about it in the podcast a little bit before, but what is reactivity? It's a hard thing to sort of generalize, but a big reaction or over the top reaction to something that is in their environment or enters into their environment. We tend to think of it being aggressive dogs who are barking and lunging at others, which absolutely it is. But we know that there are so many reasons why dogs will bark and lunge and be reactive, whether that is that they are a little bit scared, nervous, overexcited, frustrated, so many reasons alongside obviously your aggression. Sometimes it is your characteristic barking, lunging, spinning on the lead, desperately trying to get to the thing. It can also be really subtle. I know I've mentioned it in the podcast many times before. One of my dogs is reactive in my opinion, but it's not your classic shouting, jumping. He lays down out of a sort of a freeze response. So as soon as something he's unsure about enters in his environment, he hits the deck, lays down, doesn't move. Yes, it's seen as being more socially acceptable, but it's still reactivity because it's still something entering his environment that gives him and creates a big emotion that he doesn't know quite how to deal with. So some reactive dogs will want to run away. You know, it doesn't matter how they do it, but we do tend to think of them being big and loud, purely because that gets noticed more, doesn't it? So that's what we're talking about when we say about reactive dogs. Group classes, I'm sure you all know what a group class is, but a group class is where a group of dogs come together and train together. Now, that often will look different depending on where you train, to be honest, but for us, that is usually 6 dogs, or depending on numbers, maybe a few times less, sometimes a couple more, but on average 6 dogs in a space, a good distance apart, so sort of 5 to 10 metres apart, training in a group, all learning together with the distraction of each other around them. Dogs generally don't interact, so it's about learning to ignore people and dogs around you. And obviously, depending on when you arrive, there may be other classes going on at the same time, depending on your venue and where you are and where you're training. So that's what a group class looks like. Dogs that are not reactive, so are okay, generally happy and relaxed in the presence of other dogs and people. So why are these group classes not necessarily the ideal place to start training with your reactive dog? And I'm going to start with an analogy because it's one of my favourites. If you are learning to swim, so you've never swum before, and you say, right, I'm going to learn to swim today, do you jump in the deep end or does someone throw you in the deep end of the pool? And you go, I'll see what happens. I'm sure I'll be able to swim. No. Because what is likely to happen if you do jump in the deep end? First, you're going to panic because you go, oh no, actually, I don't really know how to swim. What do I do? I've got to remember I've read the book, I've got to remember how to move my arms. I've watched it on the telly. They kick their legs a little bit. You are frantically, trying to work out how to stay afloat. If you've never swum before, you wouldn't know to tread water. You wouldn't know that you need to lay on your back, for example, to float. You wouldn't know the moves. You would flail around, panicking, trying to keep yourself above water, basically to keep yourself alive. You try and get to the side, you don't want to drown. You would be panicking because you've never been in that situation before. You don't have skills to fall back on. So you haven't learnt how to swim in the shallow area, basically. So you think about kids when we teach them to swim or have water confidence. You first of all put them in a paddling pool or in the shallow bits of the pool where you literally can just sit in the water, you play games, you learn how to blow bubbles, you learn how to have your face splashed. We don't realise it, but that is all part of the process of learning how to swim, because you're learning about how the water feels, you're learning about how you can make it move with your hands and your feet. You're working out when you get splashed and get water in the face that it's okay, and your body learns how to respond to that. You learn how to blow bubbles under the water so that you're effectively learning how to breathe if you go under the water, or at least not swallow water, you're learning how to breathe out. And all of those little things that we do with toddlers in a swimming class that we seem as being fun are actually fundamental skills to help you survive in water. You then would start, holding onto the side or holding onto a parent or holding onto a float and learning how to kick your legs. The person and the float are keeping you up, so you haven't got to worry about that bit. You're just working out, how do my legs move while I'm swimming? You then may have someone hold you around the waist while you work out the arms. So we're isolating all of these different bits of swimming and teaching them as an individual skill. We then, over time, learn how to put them all together. We can still put our foot on the ground because we're in shallow water, but we're learning how to gradually build up the skills that we can do it ourselves without any support, without a float, without someone holding on. We're then learning that we can do it in open water. We can still hold the side, we can still touch the floor. We can then work on how long can we swim for. And then we can start to work out of our depth and build our strength and our sort of resilience to do it in any situation. That's in a swimming pool. You've then got open waters, which is, again, a whole different ballpark. We build up skill to enable us to swim. We don't throw people in the deep end and hope it works. And that is absolutely no different to what we do with reactive dogs before they enter the big scary world or a group class, for example. Because if we say, oh, your dog's reactive, just bring it to class, it'll get on. Without preparation, without skills, it's exactly the same as swimming. They're not going to get on very well. So why are group classes not the best place to start if you have a reactive dog? We often think, oh, they just need to get used to it. They just need to be in the situation, get used to being around other dogs, and they'll sort themselves out. And obviously, yes, group classes are a great learning opportunity for people, for dogs, to learn how to interact with other dogs, how to ignore other dogs. They develop socializations of ignoring skills. They learn how to recall and lead work around other dogs. And many dogs will thrive in a group class. And it's really individual. It's not just necessarily down to how much training you've done. So some dogs will do puppy class and they get on really well. They do the next follow-on class, they do really well. Then they hit adolescence and they start becoming a little bit reactive. Or they may have done all the training, then have an incident and then suddenly become reactive. So it's not always a case of, reactive dogs are ones that have never done any training. Sometimes it's just down to personality, ages and stages of development, or incidents that have happened in their lives. So it's not necessarily that, we need to go back and sort of go, oh, well, you didn't do it right in the first place. All of my dogs have been to puppy classes and all have got on really well. They are all reactive in their own ways, some more than others, and some more manageable and socially acceptable than others. But they've all had those skills built. I'm able to carry on bringing them to group classes because we together have skills that we have already learned. And obviously we were lucky enough to be able to do it when they were younger. Some people may not have had that opportunity. So some dogs straight away, instantly, group classes are going to be great for them. Others are going to take time to build up to a group class. So for your dog to be successful in a group class, students, people who are learning, we forget we're not just teaching our dog, we're also teaching ourselves. So there are two students, two learners when it comes to dog training. You as a handler, as a dog owner, learning skills, learning how to teach your dog things, learning how to work together, but also learning how to respond to the environment that you are in. And then you've also got your dog learning skills. So it's a double whammy, and that's why we call it a teamwork event. It's a process you go on together, because there are two parts of it. And for your learning to be successful, both parties, so that's human and dog, need to feel calm, need to feel relaxed and safe in order to process information. If you are panicking, if you don't feel safe, if you feel a little bit not confident, and that can be for any reason, some people obviously naturally are more introverted, some people will have sort of social anxiety, some people will struggle to process information as quickly as others and need it breaking down. As you'll know, if you've listened to podcasts before, my children are neurodivergent. I 90% self-diagnosed myself as having ADHD. My husband, again, has self-diagnosed himself as being neurodivergent. We know that different people need different things and need different explanations. So I appreciate that group classes are not right for everybody, because some people need to work at their own pace. They need things explained in the way they understand, which isn't always possible in a group class, not through your trainer not wanting to, but simply because we're trying to manage 6 human learners and 6 canine learners at the same time, and we don't always have the sort of situation and the time to devote that individual learning experience. So for some people, personally, sort of personality wise, neurotype wise, shift workers, whatever, group classes just aren't right for them, and that's absolutely fine. And sometimes the dog's absolutely fine in a group setting, but the human isn't, and that's absolutely okay. There's nothing wrong with yourself as a human not wanting to go to group classes, and there are so many things you can do on a one-to-one basis. We often look at one-to-one training as being the training for naughty dogs who can't cope around other people and other dogs. It's what majority of our one-to-one clients work on, reactivity. But actually, we do have some one-to-one clients who just prefer training on their own. And I must say, I personally work better on a one-to-one basis. I much prefer, secretly, if I'm in a group class, there's an odd number, I'll happily work on my own. I don't really want to partner up, and that makes me sound so antisocial. I promise you I'm not that antisocial, but I have a very sociable job. I see a lot of people, I have to talk to a lot of people, and sometimes I'm just peopled out. And for me, training is about me and my dog just zoning out together and having some fun. I don't need to be around other people at that moment in time. Makes me sound so antisocial, and I don't mean it. And if you're in a group class with me, I promise you I'm not antisocial. It's just my time out of life. Not thinking about work too much, not thinking about family, not thinking about any stressors. I just zone out with me and my dog, and I get in the zone and we have our own little world together. I may come across as being antisocial, I don't mean to. So I personally prefer one-to-one training, and that's down to me and what I like. I like to be able to work at my own pace. I like to stop and ask questions. I like it to take off its own personal tangent on where I want to work. So that's my preference. I appreciate for most people, one-to-one training is a little bit more expensive because naturally you're working one-on-one with a trainer rather than in a group. So for many reasons, there are some people who just want to work on a one-to-one basis. That's absolutely fine. Because if that makes us calm and relaxed, we're going to process information more. We're going to get more from our training. And the same applies to our dog. If our dog is working, for them to gain success, they need to feel calm and relaxed to process information and to learn. Calmness, so being in a calm state of mind, promotes rational, logical thinking. If we're able to think rationally and logically, we can make good decisions, and it's going to boost confidence. That's humans and dogs. The more positives we have, we're going to learn better. Our sort of neural pathways are going to develop stronger, and we're going to have a boost in confidence. Once you get all of that in place, you're then going to move on to the next step, and it's creating that foundation of learning. If we're not in the right place to learn, we may as well be hitting our head against a brick wall. And again, I see this in my real life with my children. If we're not in the right place to learn, if we're not calm, if we're not relaxed, it's not going to work. So we have to feel happy, calm, relaxed, us and our dog, so that we can create that foundation of learning, which enables us to build success, feel confident, and it allows us to move on to the next step. So it seems almost like you're going back to basics, but it means you're going to get more successes quicker. So yes, we've got a reactive dog or maybe an anxious person. If we immediately just throw them into a group class when they've never done any training before, they've got no skills to fall back on. They haven't learnt those foundations in a calm, relaxed environment. If humans can cope with it, if our dogs can't relax, but if your dog's kicking off and struggling in the environment, you're then panicked, you can't learn either. So it's just a sort of negative spiral. Plunging yourselves into a group training is going to make you stressed. It's going to give the dog a bit of distress, emotional overload for both of you, and neither of you are going to learn or take in information, which means you're going to then feel stressed. You're going to feel a bit embarrassed because you're in a group class and you're not getting it right and everyone else is, and your confidence naturally is going to be knocked. So one-to-one training is ideal to help build your skills. You can ask questions without feeling silly. Not that you should feel silly in a group class asking questions. I actively encourage questions. I love people to ask questions because it shows that you're learning and you're thinking and you're questioning. Some people prefer to keep those questions to themselves. That's absolutely fine too, especially in a group setting. And again, that's where that social anxiety can come in. But if you are feeling calm and relaxed, you're going to learn more. So group classes aren't necessarily the right place for reactive dogs or new owners who've not experienced reactivity before and don't have knowledge to fall back on. Now, just because you are in that position right now, your dog's reactive or has different needs, or you are finding it stressful in a group class setting, it doesn't mean that your dog's untrainable, that you're never going to get there, you're never going to be able to do group classes. It just means right now, at this moment in time, you need to start in the shallow end. You're trying to throw yourself in the deep end when you're not ready, you haven't got the skill set. So you need to go into the shallow end and start slow, start building up that foundation knowledge for your dog, but also for yourself, and have those positive wins and positive experiences so that the emotional sort of level is in the right place, and then your learning can progress. And the best way to do this is with one-to-one training initially, because then, as we've said, you are going to be in a position to learn. You're going to be in a position to effectively manage situations, direct support from your trainer, which is so important. And you and your dog are going to build in success. And then as your skills grow, one-to-one training can get more intensive. It can get the controlled settings that we use can become a little bit harder, a little bit less controlled to practice your skills so that when you are thrown into the deep end, you have all the skills to fall back on. So it's not a failure if your dog can't do group classes and you need to start with one-to-ones, or if you don't like group classes, that's absolutely fine. So yes, your dog's reactive. Yes, group classes aren't maybe right for you right now. Will they ever be right? Yes, of course they can. When you and your dog are in the right position, when you've done those foundation skills, when you've worked hard to get them ingrained into yourself and your dog, and you have practiced in lots of different controlled situations on a smaller scale. So by controlled situation, I basically mean that we're in a situation where we can control what's going on. So for example, in our one-to-one training with reactivity, we tend to work with the dog and their owner and have a controlled distraction. So a dog who is told exactly where to walk, exactly what to do, or a person, whatever their trigger is, we are in control of the triggers. And obviously, depending on what you're working on, depends on how much control we can have, but we can attempt to create a really nice controlled situation. Once you've worked in that situation and built the skills, then we can create a more distracting controlled situation like group classes, for example. So say, for example, we're talking about a dog who's reactive to other dogs. We start our one-to-one training with foundations. We then build in controlled situation of having one dog present. And then we know we can cope with that. We up the distraction levels and we up the sort of intensity of the controlled distraction by having a group class. And group classes then are a brilliant way, once you've got all those skills under your belt, to then progress your training on a little bit more. Because naturally in a group class, people are going to be walking around, dogs are going to be a little bit more unpredictable, you don't know who's going to move where, you don't know who's going to bark, but your trainer will advocate for you and say, please give this dog space because they're working through reactivity. Don't go in their personal space, respect them, so that you've got your safety net, but you've got a much more real life controlled situation to carry on your training. So just because your dog's reactive right now and you go group classes, I can't do them, it doesn't mean you're never going to do them. It just means right now you need to pull back to the foundations and heavily work on foundations, controlled settings, building up both of your confidences, and then in time group classes will be right for you. Some training schools will offer group reactivity courses, are kind of like a go-between. So we do that. We have people who have done one-to-one training. They've done the sort of working around one dog, but entering in a group class with sort of a lot more dogs and a lot more intensity of being close together isn't quite right. We have a sort of go-between where we work on a controlled distraction, just learning how to chill out in a bigger environment without too much training focus, and more about emotional skills. So there are so many options. Don't feel that just because your dog's reactive, they're not welcome in a group class and there's no way they'll ever be able to take part in the fun stuff, because they absolutely can. You say you've got your online training that you can work through. You can work remotely with a trainer on a one-to-one basis, and you can eventually build up to getting your dog into a group class. But we need to do it slowly so that they can learn. Remember, we need to be calm and relaxed and able to learn. So if this is you and you're going, oh my goodness, I wish I could take my dog to classes and I can't. You can, you will be able to, but reach out for support, whether that's with us, whether that's with someone local to you or a trainer you already know. Reach out for support. We can help people nationwide and worldwide through virtual support, which is different for everybody. So do get in touch. If you think, God, that sounds amazing, I want to be able to do these things, then reach out and we can definitely help and support you, even if it's just on an emotional level to help you have a little bit of confidence. As I said, the email link to get on hear first about our Paw Academy is in the show notes, so do have a look at that. And if you've got any questions about training a reactive dog, get in touch, drop us a message, even if it's that we can point you in the right direction and sort of give you a couple of pointers to get you going. Do reach out. Have a wonderful week, and I'll catch up with you all really soon. Thank you for listening to The Dynamic Dog Owner with me, Debbie Potter. See you next time.